This is episode 303 of Mitolife Radio. I'm Matt Blackburn, your host. Today I'm interviewing Sarah Kleiner. She is an expert in circadian biology and quantum biology. She talks about how the hormone leptin changed her life and how people can start to optimize that hormone. She talks about the interaction with light and specifically light on the eyes and her thoughts around exposure there. She talks about the different Fitzpatrick skin types, vitamin D, sunscreen, deuterium depletion, her thoughts on sauna and cold plunging, why sunglasses aren't good, timing of using light therapy, and why nighttime usually isn't ideal, why she uses ultraviolet bug zappers throughout the house, even when there aren't bugs to zap, her thoughts on grounding and earthing with sheets. She shares her app called MyCircadian, which is an upgrade from the D-Minder app that I used for years. So this is an app that you could use to measure the lux indoors and outdoors. That's a measure of brightness. You can put in your skin type, height, and weight and track your vitamin D production. Just a really well-built app and really affordable. And I like her general philosophy of not being all or nothing. So she talks a lot about that in this show, why you shouldn't strive to be perfect once you learn all of this information. And then I ask her a few listener questions, including what does she eat for breakfast? What are best practices for menopausal women to help balance their hormones? How to transition to working night shifts, advice for reversing Hashimotos, which Sarah dealt with, and general advice for parents of toddlers. So enjoy. Here is Sarah Kleiner. All right, Sarah Kleiner, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I've been a longtime fan listener, so it's super cool to sit here and chat with you today.
Yeah, I'm excited. I think we were both mutual friends of Justin Stellman over at Extreme Health Radio, and he's probably my favorite podcast besides mine. And I listened to your show with him. That was great. And I think I started following you several years ago. And so this is way overdue. So excited to talk about circadian biology and leptin. And I don't know if you've seen my past experimenting with a lot of that stuff. I mean, this was probably 2016, mostly 2017. That was like back before it was cool, right?
Yeah. Exact. Before, when people would bring it up to me, I just would roll my eyes because I was like, that just doesn't seem like legit. I needed to be more complicated. I needed to be harder. And so people have been talking to me about this sort of thing for years. And I really wrote it off because I always thought, yeah, it's just too simple to work. But yeah, sounds like you adopted it before most of us did, which is cool.
When did you get started with all this stuff?
In 2020, I would say, is when I got started. I was super into carnivore. I actually kind of got a community of, I don't like to call it a following, but that's really what it was on social media, YouTube, from documenting my carnivore journey. And it turned into this big thing. And then I wanted to get pregnant in my 40s. I had waited a long time because my daughter has a pretty severe medical injury. And I was just like, it's too hard for me to have another kid. Then I got 2020 just kind of brought everything up to say, all right, it's now or never. And I was not able to get pregnant following a strict carnivore diet. I had multiple losses and it was just a really hard time. And it was about that time when I was introduced to these concepts again from a podcast guest. And I was like, what do I have to lose at this point? And so I really started bringing these things in, I would say in 2021. In 2020, the light bulb turned on. And then in 2021, I really started making a lifestyle out of it.
That's interesting that you had issues with the carnivore diet, because that's still really trending. And I just see it on social media where And I always just kind of shine light that it's the benefit is elimination, but it's
Mhm.
such a band-aid fix, right? And the
Right.
carnivore people never say that it's a band-aid. They say it's a permanent kind of thing.
Yeah, there's a lot of issues with it. For me, it really did help with quite a few things. I stayed on it way too long. I stayed on it for 2 years solid without doing any
Wow.
carb cycling, nothing. And the end result of that was that my thyroid was downregulated.
Mhm.
I had gained 20 pounds that didn't make sense. Obviously, my metabolism said, "Oh, we're just not going to have any sort of fuel sources coming
Mhm.
in. So we're going to downregulate everything." And so while it did get rid of IBS and a lot of skin issues, anxiety and depression, I had a bunch of other issues that popped up, and I might have continued to ignore it because I was so into that community. There's a lot of really great, nice people there that I still am in contact with and friends with to this day, that I still really like them as people. However, it's like a cult, right? It's we just are going to ignore these things because we're having these benefits. And if I hadn't gotten to a place where I'm like, I don't really give a crap what diet I'm on. I want to have a baby. Like, I want a baby. I want a healthy baby. And this diet is not it for me for fertility. So I was willing to just say, okay, I'm going to leave this here. And if I recommend carnivore to anyone now, it's as a short term thing to let's kind of calm the inflammation down for a bit while we work on all these other things. Because, like you said, it can band aid things. And yeah, it's still a big thing. So
Was leptin one of the things that really helped you out, like researching that hormone and
that was what got me really interested in circadian biology and understanding that all of our hormones are circadian in nature. But yeah, leptin was something that I was encouraged to study when I found circadian biology and quantum biology, because leptin and fertility are so intertwined. And what I found out after years, even though I was 20 pounds overweight, had gained 20 pounds, my leptin had gone very low from being in a low carb, carnivore, kind of ketogenic state for an extended amount of time. And I find this is very common for women when they do these diets long term, is that they go into a low leptin state. So the body just downregulates a lot of the fertility functions, thyroid, hormones, all of that stuff. And so I said, okay, well, I have to figure out how to fix my leptin. And I did that through the lens of circadian biology.
I remember I haven't studied leptin in years, but I remember years ago hearing the connection with protein, and it was
Mhm.
something crazy. I think the number I heard is like 100 grams with breakfast or something that's
Oh, no.
almost impossible to hit. Maybe it was 50 to 70 or something like
Mhm.
that. But it was
50 to 70 is what I've heard talked
okay.
about. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And so I can imagine, I mean, like I did for several years, black coffee for breakfast and
Same.
1 hour a day eating window and just insanity, intermittent
Hmm.
fasting protocols. That will really downregulate leptin, right?
Oh, totally. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
And it's very trendy. It's very trendy now to not eat until 1 in the afternoon, 2 in the afternoon, to do intermittent fasting, coffee for breakfast. And short term, it works for people, I think, to lose weight, some people. And then some people, it doesn't work at all. They just end up inflamed and feeling worse. But a lot of people, I fell into a trap of, this was working. I feel good. I have all this energy, which is stress hormones. And I just kept doing it. And it's like, it had stopped working for me clearly, but I just kept doing it. And it was the whole desire to have a baby that made me stop and say, okay, this is not, I got to throw this out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, so you created like the 21 day, like you call it the leptin reset.
Mhm.
Is it more than just reintroducing breakfast if someone's been skipping it and making focusing on protein, or there like steps to it? Or-
Yeah, there's several steps to it. But eating breakfast with protein and fat, essentially a protein rich breakfast that's going to stabilize your blood sugar. Getting the blood sugar stabilized is super important. But the most important thing, because I know a lot of people that are in that intermittent fasting, skipping breakfast, kind of stress hormone type of a place, they're nauseous in the morning when they wake up and they think about food. I get those people a lot. So I really start people with sunlight. And it sounds, again, too simple to be true. I wrote it off for many years, chasing the next more extreme diet to the best of my ability. And, you know, that's the light is really helpful for the appetite because in that sunrise portion, you are turning on several important functions in the brain. You're getting your cortisol to the right level because a lot of people, their cortisol is way too high in the morning. So that red and infrared, and there's a perfect amount of blue that comes online during sunrise. Very important for the brain, HPA, HPG axes. And then you've got that next window, UVA, where POMC is activated and a neuropeptides, neurohormones, one of which is called alpha MSH, that is directly responsible for appetite regulation. And so I get people outside, sunrise, and then again at UVA. And this, if someone has a really hard time with eating in the morning, I'm like, just do this. And then start with a hard boiled egg, start with some raw cheese, just start with a little something to start giving your body that signal. Then we'll work on the evening environment. But that morning signaling of light is so important to help re-regulate leptin, re-regulate appetite because of those things I mentioned with how light interacts with the brain and the metabolism.
That's awesome. Yeah, I remember when I was getting into that years ago, I was still wearing contact lenses because I had myopia growing up, and I remember being really frustrated in junior high and high school, and just straining my eyes to see the whiteboard and stuff. So I just ended up getting, I think it was fourth or fifth generation LASIK eye surgery, which I'm curious your thoughts on because a lot of what I've read in the quantum health world is it permanently screws up the clock in your eye, and it'll permanently wreck your sleep, and it might fix the camera part, but it wrecks the clock sort of thing. I sleep great. I mean, I use the Aura Ring intermittently. That shows that I'm sleeping great. I'm getting great REM and deep sleep. And I mean, this was probably over 10 years ago now that I got that, but that was a game changer because I feel like it improved my brain function getting that, just being able to see better, not straining or not needing glasses or contacts, but also just being able to get light in my naked, uncovered eyes 24/7 or whatever, during the day, which was huge.
Yeah. I've heard from people in the sphere saying it's horrible and, now you've wrecked your eyes and you can't undo it and you're blocking different spectrums and you're not going to be able to communicate with the brain appropriately. But I disagree with that. Honestly, I think that we don't truly understand the adaptability of the human body, of the brain, the neuroplasticity at any age, really. And I think that people, because I get this question quite often in my leptin course, in my community, people who've had LASIK, and they're like, well, your program's just not going to work for me. I heard XYZ person, quantum health expert, circadian health expert say if you have LASIK, you're screwed. And I'm like, I disagree. So I even have a whole 20-minute module in my intro section talking about this, how we have photoreceptors on the skin, how the brain has the ability to adapt, and you're still going to get a changing amount of blue throughout the day. You're still going to get red and infrared. And so is it ideal? Probably not. However, I do think that the brain and the body can adapt to this and that you still can have optimal sleep and optimal hormones and really good health, even if you've had LASIK before. That's my opinion.
That's awesome. Yeah. Yeah. I tried a lot of stuff before I did it. Pinhole glasses, the Bates method, doing different eye exercises, changing the focus. And I think I was vegetarian at the time, so I was definitely deficient in a lot of nutrients. But yeah, the scariest part for me or the downside is that flap. So it's like a permanent flap that doesn't heal on the cornea. But I believe with, I don't know, maybe peptide therapy or things in the future, we're going to be able to, I don't know, seal that at some point. But I agree with you. Yeah, it's definitely not ideal. And I wish I could have done it naturally. I just tried and I could.
Yeah. I mean, we all have stuff that we're like, I wish I didn't do that. But what I would tell people that come to me, because people get really upset when they hear other people talk about how it's just the worst decision they could have ever made. I'm like, can you undo that now? Is there is there a go back in time and not do that button you can press? No. So let's let's do these other things. I still believe in you. I still believe that you can have amazing health, even having done this procedure. And I've seen people still continue to have amazing health and great results from implementing circadian biology and these concepts into their routines. So yeah,
Mhm.
yeah,
Yeah, a great point too about photoreceptors on the skin.
yes.
I'm curious because everyone that I've talked to in this space has a different perspective on timing of, because I think that's the FAQ, right? Is how long
Oh yeah,
should I get
everyone asks
outside?
that.
Like, what's the exact minutes and seconds? And I mean, my belief is it's kind of different for
Hmm.
everybody. I mean,
Hmm.
this morning, generally, I eat breakfast, have my coffees. I mean, this might be reversed for what's ideal, but I do breakfast, coffee, and then go outside and have my coffee on the deck and get sunlight in my eyes. And that feels great.
Hmm.
But I'm usually only out there for 5 to 10 minutes max. And that feels like a good amount of time for me.
Yeah, and you're in a really cold place too. You've got tons of snow on the ground, and it's going to be different by your location. I'm here in Georgia, and so it's maybe gets into the 20s Fahrenheit.
Mhm.
Maybe today it was in the 30s, I think, this morning, and I can wrap up with a blanket and go sit out there and eat breakfast. But I think it depends on how circadian entrained you are in the first place, how messed up your sleep is, where you're working from. Because if you're pretty aligned, which I know you are, you live off grid and you're not around a lot of modern stressors, I would say that's fine. And it's cold out there too. And I know you're taking breaks throughout the day to get natural light and you've got all the things. But if it was someone who's living in a high rise apartment, let's say in Chicago in the middle of the city, surrounded by non-native EMF, and they're like, is 30 seconds enough for me outside in the morning? I'm going to say absolutely not. And you really are going to have to try to spend a little more time. More time is better. Honestly, that's a hard thing for people to come to, but more time is always going to be better. And when you're in a really cold place, sometimes that means opening the door and poking your head out the window for 30 seconds, going back inside, doing your thing, going out, getting another 30 seconds. Cause I'm of the belief and the mindset that it's cumulative. So, 30-second bursts, 2-minute bursts,
Mhm.
and just doing that as often as you can throughout the morning when it's really cold is going to be helpful. It's going to add up to a total. So, I think the thing that people fall into, the trap people fall into with the circadian biology work is they think they have to have it perfectly and they have to
Yeah.
follow a, 10-step protocol and check off all the boxes. And it's like, no, we just have to entrain your body back to light and dark cycles, which most people are completely disconnected from in the modern world. And it doesn't have to be hours that you're out there. It's just open the door, look outside, step outside for a minute and go in and out and just do your best, really.
Yeah, and especially for those, I think it's a lot of people that wear glasses
Mm-hmm.
or contacts. Just those people have to be mindful of having those
Mm-hmm.
off, right? So they're not blocking, as you mentioned, the UVA and the different
Yeah,
wavelengths
there's
that are
there's
beneficial.
Daly's brand, I think Alcon. They have contacts that don't have UV blockers in them because there's a lot of interesting research showing UVA light in the eye and how that really impacts hormones, thyroids, uh, appetite
Mm.
hormones, all those things. And it's also on the skin as well. So it's eyes and skin. But there's definitely an impact of blocking the UV. So that's why sunglasses are a definite no. And glasses are just, slide them down to the end of your nose. You don't have to take them all the way and be safe. The amount of people who are like, I took my glasses off, like you said, and I tripped and I fell. I'm like, well, I didn't say to to do that. Find somewhere safe to sit down and then take them off. Be safe. Try to use common sense with these principles.
Yeah, I remember when I got into watching the sunset, which I don't live
Mm.
by the beach anymore, so I haven't done it in years. It's hard up here in the valley and mountains and stuff. But when I look directly at the sun, I mean, years ago, I was telling people if it hurts, obviously don't do it. Like, don't stare
Right.
at the sun midday. It's kind of obvious. But
Mm.
for sunset, you can tell when you're looking directly at it and your eyes are completely fine, there's no strain, then
Hmm.
it's fine to do. Um,
Hmm.
I definitely miss doing that. I do feel the difference. I think that's why a lot of the quantum health people live at the equator, right? Ecuador and different
Yeah.
places.
Yeah, but I honestly feel that there is a big advantage if you are like a Fitzpatrick 1,
Mm,
2, to having months that there's less UV, no UVB,
mm,
because we are really meant to tap into melatonin, I think, in these colder,
mm,
darker months. And there's a lot of healing benefits that we can get when we're really, really maximizing our body's own melatonin production. And a lot of people miss out on that in the winter. And I saw this reel on Instagram last night, and someone was like, you need to be mega dosing vitamin D right now. Don't wait until you feel terrible in the middle of winter to mega dose your vitamin D. I'm like, but shouldn't we say that we need to be really maximizing our sleep and our rest and our
mm,
kind of going inward right now rather than trying to act like it's summer year round, you know? And I know the
yeah.
vitamin D conversation, there's multi sides to it. I don't really like anybody megadosing, honestly.
Mhm.
And I think you do have to be careful with vitamin D. But I think in winter, we need to look more towards melatonin as the dominant hormone that our body needs to be making rather than saying we need to be making all this vitamin D or taking vitamin D in the wintertime.
Yeah, I agree. I've kind of seen both sides. I've gone pretty deep
Mm-hmm.
down the side you've probably seen of
Mm-hmm.
anti and then now more balanced. But I mean, we have a mutual friend, Chris Sweeting, EMR tech, and
Mm-hmm.
the narrowband UV light therapy is amazing. And
Mm-hmm.
if you have the genetics to be able to synthesize vitamin D from UV light, that's, I think that's definitely the way to go. And I don't
Mm-hmm.
know what percent of the population can't do that, but I would imagine it's a very small percentage of people that can't make vitamin D.
Yeah. Yeah, I actually have my Krypton like right here beside the desk because I keep it running down here when I'm working
Cool.
a lot. I love it. So I do supplement a little bit of UVB, UVA in the winter with light. I haven't taken a vitamin D supplement personally since 2020, but it's like I said, I think there's always nuance and there's more sides to it than just like never or always. I think we have to be willing to look at all sides. But that's just my personal choice. And my levels are, I think I tested at the end of the summer, they were a 60. So I'm okay with that, naturally.
Yeah, that's awesome. I
Yeah.
I told Chris in our recent show that you've probably seen my Oligioscan like test that
I
I
saw
post,
that.
and
Yeah. I was
that to
looking
me
up
is
though. I'm going to get one of those.
yeah, it's if you're a practitioner, I mean, I just scan people around me. I think it's like 4 to 5K to start
Oh,
because you have to
okay.
pay for each test, but it's
Oh.
totally worth it. And what's interesting is the scanning the vitamin D, it's looking in the tissue. Because I
Mm.
think people just like iron
Yeah.
and there's always controversy about is
Yeah.
the test accurate? And a lot of
Right.
people say that with the 25D test.
I agree.
Is it
It's
reflective?
what's in the blood at that
Mhm,
particular time. It's not an accurate measure of what's actually being used by the body.
mhm,
I'm like, you can't live and die by this number. And there's dozens of metabolites that are not being measured that play other important roles and functions in the body as well. We're just looking at one number. So yeah, the vitamin D conversation is definitely a hot one. It gets people really riled up, but it's not just like a take your supplements and you're fine kind of a deal. There's so
mhm.
much more
Yeah.
to it.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I mean, it like for me, supplementing melatonin, I do the basic stuff on top of that. And I would say the same thing with vitamin D. If someone's going to do it, it's like you can't
Mm-hmm.
just skip everything that you're talking about
Right.
and just take it.
Right. Exactly. Yeah, exactly. And I think the only time I'll tell people maybe you should do a short course of vitamin D supplementation, and obviously your K2, your
Mhm,
magnesium, all that needs to come
mhm,
along with it. You don't just take it by itself, is you feel like you're getting sick, you've got something that is really just taking you down. Or if they do a blood test and we've looked at all, some of the other markers like 125, get a full
mhm.
panel and their numbers are just like super, super low and they're feeling really, really bad. I'm like, well, you might want to consider doing a little short term supplementation, but it's not something I'm going to go again on Instagram and just say, everyone needs to be on this. If you're not, you're putting yourself at risk.
Yeah.
But you get a lot
Yeah.
more views than, hey, let's have a nuanced conversation. But that's the way it works, right?
Yeah. Well, I follow some people that like demonize certain supplements. You have to be really careful because you could OD on, whatever it is, vitamin E or
Mm,
something, but then they never demonize vitamin D and it's just the more the better. It's like,
mm,
yeah, people,
missing
it's just very
some.
biased on social
Yeah.
media, as I think that.
Oh, yeah.
No wonder everybody's confused, right? So,
Oh, yeah. And then they come into my private group. I'm like, oh, Lord. I got a great community though, because a lot of the members have been with me for many years and they've kind of come along with me on the journey. And so we get a new person in with all the questions. And before I even have a chance to respond, they're like, okay, let's talk about this. So, yeah.
You brought up UVA a few times, and I wanted to ask your thoughts on sunscreen. Like I just
Mm,
interviewed Matt Maruka, and it's funny
mm.
photos of him. He usually has like a white. He does his nose. I think he focuses on his nose with sunscreen, um, which I think it's a controversial topic. I mean,
Mhm.
years ago I was just so anti. You never have to wear it, and I haven't worn it in years. But if I were to travel, and especially now going from a North Idaho winter to Hawaii or something, I would douse myself in healthy, sunscreen
Like a
without.
zinc oxide.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
that's how I feel. And Matt, I know Matt is in Bali right now. He goes
Mhm.
to Bali during the winter. And he's a Fitzpatrick one, probably like me. And so, yeah, if I was going to Bali right now, I'd either be, get my sun exposure time. And then I'd probably put on a hat, cover up. If I was going to be in direct sunlight, I would wear some zinc oxide. I wouldn't be a dumbass. So I'm just like, why can't we just have common sense, people? Like, don't use a chemical laden sunscreen. Look at something like zinc oxide. That's a safe product. And yeah, if you can't seek shade and you can't cover up, then I would protect myself personally.
hmm And is one of the things I've heard about sunscreen is it blocks, is it UVA and allows UVB, or is it vice versa? I can't remember.
I've heard it blocks both,
Okay.
which can have, obviously you're missing some of the benefits. I don't think it blocks red and infrared though. I
Mm-hmm.
was just talking with a doctor about that a few weeks ago on my show, and he said that it does not block red and infrared. And I think a lot of sunlight benefits that we actually get from being outdoors are from the infrared because of the impact that it has on our cellular water on the exclusion zone. Um, so I think everyone gets very hyper focused on vitamin D and UV light, which there are a lot of really interesting, wonderful things that those wavelengths do for the brain, the metabolism, the body, but also infrared, I think, and near infrared because of the effect of subcellular melatonin. I think these are ignored largely. And I know people are studying them more and more. So it's definitely an interesting, exciting time.
Yeah. Yeah. It's something like, is it roughly 40% of the sunlight's infrared?
Yeah,
Near infrared?
50% when you
Wow.
count far infrared, near, starting at
Wow.
near, going all the way to far up till the 3000 nanometers. So yeah, and even when it's cloudy and rainy, there's a ton of infrared outdoors and red. And yeah, when you look into Dr. Gerald Pollack's work and his study of infrared and the impact it has on exclusion zone water, and I view health a little bit more through that lens, just looking at
Mhm.
this water network in the body and how the body can communicate and have energy because of exclusion zone water. I think the implications for infrared are huge, and near infrared and the subcellular melatonin production, I think, is huge as well.
Yeah. I had Gerald Pollack on the show, I think last year, and I think I forgot to ask him about ultrasound because there was just one line in his book where he mentioned how ultrasound and infrared can build exclusion zone water. And I thought that was fascinating because I play around with cool tech and I have an ultrasonic little brain device, and it's always made me feel just if my brain's feeling off, it just balances it. And now looking at Gerald's work, it would make sense that ultrasound is affecting the intracellular water, and
Yeah.
that's where the benefits are. So yeah, that's a cool way to look at health. And you've been studying deuterium for a while too, right?
That was one thing I did do to help get pregnant. Because I got pregnant when I was 42, had my son at age 43 because he just turned two. And I did a deuterium depletion, like strict with the water, with the food. Um, yeah. And I actually do feel like that was helpful in allowing me to get pregnant after multiple miscarriages. I even did IVF, which I definitely really regret doing that now. Looking back, I'm like, oh, why did I do that? It didn't work. We didn't get anything viable from either round of IVF. We did two.
Wow.
But after that second round of IVF, I was like doing deuterium depletion, cold plunging, grounding, sunlight, red light therapy on my belly. Let's do it. So, and it worked. So, yeah, I have
Cool.
talked with Dr. Boros a few times,
Cool.
um, some of his proteges as well. Dr. Petra, she works a lot with cancer patients and deuterium. So, I think it's a really interesting topic as well.
Yeah, it's funny when I hear people saying it's a fad and they're just trying to get you to buy expensive water and blah blah blah. And
Dr.
it's
Boros isn't all about the water though.
yeah.
He's like, I'm discouraging you from buying the water. Like you can do this natural, you know?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. It's really. I mean, if you can afford the water, it's like a cheat, right? It's like a
hmm
shortcut.
hmm
Um, but naturally, to deplete it, my understanding is sunlight does it.
hmm
Like a high fat, low carb diet does it.
hmm
Um, there are several things, right? That
Yeah.
help.
I have like a deuterium ebook and I've got a list of foods that are low deuterium. Seed oils are super high deuterium. There's interesting things that are really high in deuterium. And it's UV light is the biggest factor for deuterium depletion. That's why eating a ton of out of season foods. Now, I'm not perfect and every now and then I'm like, I need a freaking banana. Not often, but sometimes just my toddler's eating a banana. I'm like, that looks really good. And so I don't override my body the way I used to and just be like, no, that's high deuterium. Don't touch it. You're going to die. I'm like, okay, I'm not going to get a bag of Doritos from the freaking convenience store. It's a banana, right?
Mhm.
But
Yep.
it's a food that's grown in really strong UV light. And the UV light here is not super strong right now. So UV light is one of those things that helps the body to deplete deuterium. We also have a UV receptor on cytochrome 1 in the mitochondria. So there are definitely biological imprints that, in programs that exist with our bodies and food and deuterium as well. But, if you if you live a pretty healthy circadian lifestyle, eat a healthy diet, eating a mango in December, as long as you're not doing it like daily, is probably not going to like cause major issues.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know why it's so hard for people to stay balanced and not get overly strict when they get into something. Because I guess it just,
Right.
you go to the extreme, but I've been there. I think you've been
That's
there. We've all,
me
yeah.
100%. That's my, I tend to just make things my entire personality. And then I'm like, how do I backtrack from this one?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it doesn't, as long as you don't harm yourself going to the
Right.
extreme, it's not wrong. It's just, and there's a lot of learning to be had there. But I think the problem is when you start spreading that as truth and gospel to people when you're in that extreme state.
hmm
Um,
Yeah. And there's a lot of that. And it's very popular on social media. If you can, say these sorts of things, these extreme statements, it really does get people riled up. So, yeah.
yeah. What do you think about combining, like yesterday, I've been getting back into my wood burning barrel sauna, which I love,
Mm.
combining sauna therapy and sweating with deuterium depleted water. So you're kind of doing like a rapid water change in your body.
Oh, I love that. I've been thinking about doing a depletion. I think winter time when the UV is super low is just a really wonderful time to do a depletion. So, yeah, I think that's a really powerful thing to do. Absolutely.
That's awesome. Do you have pets that you give it to, or I don't know if
I
I'm.
haven't been giving it to my dog. I might. I mean, she's doing pretty well. She's about to be 11, so
Oh, cool.
yeah, I'm considering doing a depletion. I have a bunch of water. I've been putting it in my I have an Axiom hydrogen machine. And so we use deuterium depleted water just for the inhalation.
Mm.
That's the only thing I put in that machine. So I've got a bunch of the water. I've been thinking about it. So
Mateo's awesome. Yeah.
I love Mateo. He's so cool. He's invited me and my daughter to come when he opens his wellness center in Costa Rica. I'm like, yes, sign
That's
me up.
awesome.
I'll be there.
That's super cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm giving it to my two cats, and I
Mm,
ozonate it, and they're living like kings and queens. But I'm
nice.
curious. I mean, I probably going to save on vet bills, and because it's not just cancer, right? It affects
Right.
everything. So,
Right. It's really impacting mitochondrial function, which is the energy management system of the entire body.
hmm yeah, absolutely. So yeah, I wanted to ask you. Um, trying to think where to go with this.
So many
um,
places.
I know. Well, so we talked about leptin, we talked about UV, vitamin D. Um, you mentioned cold plunging.
Hmm.
What's your philosophy on that as far as because I know that's something that people take extreme sides on. They
Hmm.
say, it's never beneficial or do it every day. And now I
Hmm.
see mostly what I see online is the consensus is it's mostly for the mental fortitude benefit, but it can be a detriment to muscle building. And I don't know. I
Yeah,
guess people say everything about it. My
they do.
perspective is there's a time and a place to do it. And
Hmm.
obviously, it's easiest to do it in the summer when it's 90 degrees out,
I
right?
love doing it in the summer. That's really, I don't do very much of it in the winter now. I've got a Morosco forge and a sauna, infrared sauna, Morosco forge. I just, I've been doing the sauna the last couple days, and that plunge just sits there staring at me. I'm like, hey, I'm not in the mood. It's cold outside. So my favorite is laying out in the sun, doing some timed sun exposure. I use my app so I can understand how much time I can stay out there before I'm risking overexposure. But it's pretty hot here in Georgia. And so I'll get pretty hot and sweaty and then jump in my cold plunge. And that feels like absolute heaven, honestly. And combining UV light and cold, I feel like there's something really magic about that. But for getting pregnant, that is when I got into cold plunging, is when I was trying to get pregnant, which most people are going to be like, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. Like not a fertility enhancer. I became friends with a guy named Dr. Corey Gasvini, who is really, he taught me a ton. Dr. Corey and Carrie Bennett taught me a lot of what I know. Dr. Jay Montgomery, there's a few people, Dr. Pollock, that I learned just so much from. Dr. Corey Gasvini was someone who was just really kind to me when I was going through all the fertility struggles. And he's like, look, you're an H2, that's my haplotype. You need to get cold. You want to improve your egg health. You want to improve your mitochondrial function. You've got to get cold. And so I was like, all right, I'm jumping in ice. Screw it, all or nothing me. So I was like, wow, the first time I did it, it felt so good. So I made the mistake the first month in. This was, I think, October of 2021. I did it every single day and sometimes twice a day. And then I was getting up to 20 minutes at a time and
Wow.
stupid, right? I also had more body fat on me, right? So right at that time, before I got pregnant, I was probably like 160 pounds and I'm 5'7". I'm pretty tall. Right now, I'm about 130. So I would not even dare to think about doing something like that right now with the body weight that I'm at, because I'm pretty lean. And if you're super lean, you do not do that. So what I learned after that first month of just being super extreme, my cycle was 5 days late in November. I'm like, oh, well, this is not pro pregnancy. So I scaled it back in November and December to just doing 3 days a week, and doing no longer than 5 minutes and no colder. I think I stayed around between 35, 40 degrees, which is still pretty dang cold.
Yeah.
But 3 minutes max, usually 3 times a week. And then if it was the week before. Oh, and this is another thing I learned. If you're trying to get pregnant, then you don't want to do the cold plunging during the 2 week wait because it can basically prevent implantation because it can elevate your white blood cells. And so the embryo is like, peace. This is not an environment we want to stay in. So messed up in October, but I was loving the cold plunging. November was doing 3 times a week. And then around that last week of the cycle, I kind of would back off a little bit. And then December, same thing, did the whole month that way. And then in January, it kind of dawned on me. I'm like, I should have got pregnant last month. I'm feeling so good. Everything's so optimized. I don't think I'm supposed to cold plunge during that 2 week wait. And so that January of 2022, I cold plunged all the way up until the day of ovulation, just doing that 3 days a week. And then ended up getting pregnant that month. And yeah, I didn't cold plunge at all during pregnancy. I didn't want to. It's like, they say it's safe, but I was so protective by the time I did finally get pregnant that I was like, I'm just not doing it. So yeah, I felt like it did help.
With what you said, it sounds like cold plunging could be used as birth control, right?
Yeah,
if they
I
time it.
think.
That's
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah, with that 2 week wait. I mean, I wouldn't use that as birth control personally because then I got pregnant. And I'm like, sorry.
Yeah.
It worked for me.
Yeah, under 40 degrees is intense. My sweet spot when I was doing it, I would do 57 degrees,
Mhm.
57, 58 for 15 to 20 minutes. And
Mhm.
I just liked keeping it there. And from the
Yeah.
research I saw, that's kind of
That's
where it
57
was.
degrees is um really good. I've seen the research at 57 degrees and my plunge is set at 50. And the
Wow.
longest I stay in there is like 2-3 minutes. That's it. So yeah.
Yeah, it's fascinating. And you mentioned your haplotype. You said you're at
H2.
H2? Okay.
Yeah. So Northern European.
Okay. Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
H5, but I haven't looked too deeply into what that means and the haplogroup stuff. But generally, if you're European, usually you have more of a cold tolerance, correct? And
Oh, totally. Yeah. Yep. Definitely. Your mitochondria work different when exposed to cold.
hmm, yeah, I feel better in the winter. It's interesting. Like I'm looking outside, there's snow as far as I can see, and I like it. I mean, I don't know why I feel better. My mood's up if it's the light that's UV, even the index one being one, it's just reflecting off the snow everywhere, and I'm getting more of it. But I feel just better mood, more energy in the winter than I do in the summer.
Mhm.
It's interesting.
I'm the same way, honestly. I mean, I'm down here on the 33rd latitude, so it can get pretty hot. I think the UV index gets up to maybe 11, 12 in the
Wow.
summer. So it gets pretty intense here. And I've been having this conversation with my really good friend, Dr. Sarah Pugh, because she's down in El Salvador right now. And she's like, I could never live here. She's like, this is dangerous because she's from Leeds, from the UK. She's like, this is dangerous for somebody that has grown up in Leeds and adapted. And she was pretty tan, actually. She's like, you could really hurt yourself down here if you're not careful. So I think there is something to your haplotype, where you live. And I've found so many people that are of this northern haplotype. Once you teach them these circadian principles, how to maximize light, how to maximize sleep and take advantage of the dark and making more melatonin in the winter, they do feel better. They stop suffering with the seasonal anxiety, seasonal depression, all the weight gain. And they do, they feel better when it's colder. And I think it's more of a natural habitat for them. But our society is just, it's supposed to be summer all the time. You keep the lights on till 11 o'clock at night, stay in a heated home, you never really experience any seasonality. Eat, whatever you want, your green tropical mango smoothies all winter long. So people don't really experience seasonality, even though they might live in a place like Idaho. They don't live the way that you do.
That's a really good point. Yeah. Yeah, I'll never forget my brother is a metalhead, and so he took me to a Metallica concert, and like a guy in front of us drinking beer. He was wearing sunglasses as
Oh my
the sun
gosh.
was setting, and then as soon as the sun setted, and went down. He took the sunglasses off. So they like exact opposite of what he should have been doing, you know.
Right?
And it just that really clicked for me at that point. I'm like, wow, yeah, people, no wonder cancer's through the roof and everyone's overweight, and they're telling the body it's daytime at night and vice
Mhm.
versa, right?
Exactly. And sunglasses actually dilate your eyes. And so they allow more, once you take them off, they allow more blue light in and make your eyes more photosensitive. So yeah,
Yeah.
I don't mess with sunglasses, you know, unless I have to be, which never happens because I'm a busy mom and I don't go places. But if I was on a boat in the water or if I was on the snow and had to do some skiing, which never even done that in my life, but I get these messages from people. I'm like, you got to protect your eyes and your skin in those situations because the sun is that's not natural. A glare like that is not natural for your eyes and for your skin. And so use, again, common sense and understand if it's not a natural way that our body would get that, then you might want to protect your eyes.
Hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Do you think it's uh, like, do you like setting up your house to where you don't need to wear blue blocking glasses at night,
Mm-hmm.
with bulbs and, iris or flux and different things on your phone? And because I know some people just do it all, like they do
Mm-hmm.
the blue blockers and all of the blocking things. I generally only wear my blue blockers when I'm out or traveling, and I feel like that's enough. I just do the red screens and turn
Mm-hmm.
the brightness down. Although I am kind of questioning my setup because I've heard that having it too dark is a stressor. Like if your eyes have to strain to see things, because I keep it pretty dim in here at night.
Mm.
Um, I mean, I guess you could just go off how you feel. Maybe I'm
I
overthinking it,
think,
but
yeah. And I think night blindness is really more of a low vitamin A issue
Mm.
and blue light toxicity in general. But because I have a son who's 2 and he loves to steal my blue blockers and put them on, but that's for giggles. It's not because he actually wants to wear them. And so for him, and my daughter is severely autistic and non-speaking, so she's not wear blue blockers. So for the kids, I have the house set up with, I've got red panels on the floor. I've got my little Fun Charge Mini
Cool.
that I will carry around as a flashlight. I do have special bulbs throughout the house. I keep it really dim. Now my husband hates it, really hates it. At least once a week. It was last night. Can't freaking see anything in this room. I'm like, just turn on the big light. I'm in here. The door is closed. Turn the big light on. I won't get mad, I promise, because he couldn't see something in the bedroom and he knows I hate the big light. And so the big light came on and he was able to figure out what he was doing. But it's been like 5 years of this. So he's better about it. He's not as annoyed about it as he used to be, but I do have my house set up pretty well at night. And I measure the lux also to make sure it's dim enough. Cause with some of these panels, they're so bright that the lux is, I mean, I've got the Firehawk in the room with my cold plunge and my sauna. That thing is like 10,000 lux. I measured it the other morning.
Wow.
And you really want your lux in the evening to be 10 and below. So my goal with the kids is to keep it as dim as I can, but everyone can still kind of see what they're doing and play. So it's a balance, especially in the winter.
I'll have to get a lux meter. That's
Yeah.
interesting.
It's in the MyCircadian app. I have a lux meter in there.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. That's one of the things that I have people look at because I want to motivate people, especially in the winter time, because sitting behind a window, you're not only blocking red, infrared, and some of the UV, but you're not getting enough brightness. And just simply going from behind a window to outside, your lux is going to go up tremendously. And your brain needs a certain amount of lux to turn on metabolism, hormonal processes, and help you with appetite regulation, depression, anxiety. I mean, it's all the Lux light box people studied these things extensively. So I got the science to back it up. But I don't want people buying those boxes. I'd rather them just
Yeah.
get motivated to step outside.
Yeah, I'm fortunate. I built another greenhouse dome on my new mountain, and the polycarbonate, I know it allows in UV, and I put a wood
Mm.
stove in my new one. So I'm excited for this winter when it's negative 20 out to go and hang out in there during the daytime and be nice and warm, but still get. So if you have an outdoor, greenhouse, I think
Hmm.
that's
Oh
an
yeah.
awesome way to do it too.
Yeah, we my partner Carrie and I were talking with Dr. Glenn Jeffrey in the UK. He's been studying infrared light and the effect of on the mitochondria, metabolism. And he's working right now with a bunch of engineers and architects to build this huge, it's a start, right? It's a new Mayo clinic, I believe that's going to be in New York. And that's one of the things that he's working with them on is the windows so that maybe there's one pane of quartz glass and the rest are regular windows, but they're seeing that patients that are in the hospital need to be exposed to infrared, need UV, they need a natural sunlight spectrum. But our windows are so energy efficient, especially in hospitals and these big buildings, that they shut all those the spectrums of light out. And so that's part of they're like, we have no budget. We're going to just spend as much money as possible to make a healthy hospital. I'm like,
Wow.
good luck with that. But this this is a start to allow some of those really important, like especially the red and the infrared, to penetrate through the glass to get into the room with the patient. So, yeah.
That's really cool. That's sounds like good news.
Yeah,
Because
I
I know
think
people
so.
bash the Mayo Clinic a lot, but
Oh, yeah. I
so
mean,
with the
centralized medicine, it is what it is, but
yeah,
I'm glad that the people that are going to be in those facilities hopefully will be able to get some natural light because I think the
definitely.
hospital environment, one of the reasons why it's such a terrible environment for people to be in when they're sick is that they have absolutely zero infrared light in their environment and they're around so much non-native EMF, blue light. I mean, it's just you feel terrible when you're in one of those places. So it's bad for everybody.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and it's probably just a breeding ground for germs and stuff without any UV light
No
getting in
UV
there.
light. Yeah, exactly.
So with the Lux, like you said, being 10 and below at night, and you mentioned the Firehawk being 10,000, but I
Yep.
know even like the narrowband the Krypton light that Chris
Mm-hmm.
sells, that still seems pretty bright. So is
Mm-hmm.
your perspective with red light therapy and light therapy in general to not use it at night? Because I would imagine the Krypton's, I don't know what, 3,000 for it's probably
It's
pretty.
probably about 5,000 lux because I've
Wow.
got the Krypton down here. I collect red light panels. I have like panels everywhere because Chris has given me a lot of panels over the years. I've bought one and then he's given me a bunch. So I love Chris. He's a really dear friend. But the Inferno I have up in my bedroom, that one measures when I'm about 12 inches away from it, measures like 6,000 lux, 8,000 lux. I haven't measured the Krypton down here yet, but I would imagine it's similar because they're
Mhm.
pretty similar brightness. So with red light therapy, I typically tell people to do it during the day when the sun is up because that's when we would have those wavelengths available in the first place. And then if you have to do it before sunrise, okay, but know that it's probably going to phase shift your wake time. So
Mm.
yeah, if you're up at 5:30 in the morning and you don't want to be up, then I wouldn't do red light therapy to pass the time. I would meditate, pray, journal, spend some quality time, just relaxing rather than doing the red light therapy because it will phase shift your wake time. And then if you have to do it after sunset, don't do it facing forward with your eyes looking at the device. Do it maybe with your back and then just do it on infrared because the infrared is not as bright as the red when you measure it. So, um, those are the things I usually tell people with the panels.
So when you say phase shift the wake time, does that mean it'll kind of bring it up sooner, basically,
Yeah.
because you're giving the body the signal?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, because the brightness, the amount of brightness off the panel is going to tell your body to start making cortisol, but it's missing the
Mhm.
blue light, and so it'll be a little bit confused.
Yeah.
Because at daybreak, of course, there's tons of red and infrared, but not like the same amount of brightness and intensity that you get off of a panel. So yeah, it is. It could be sort of a Zeitgeber, I guess you could say.
Interesting. Have you heard that UV you can use any time of day? Because I heard that years ago from
Hmm.
like a quantum health guru that there's no downs. Like if you use UV light at midnight, there's
Hmm.
no, assuming there's no blue in it.
Yeah,
Uh,
it's below the spectrum of blue and green that would interrupt and activate the SCN. So I actually have that's one of the things that drives my husband crazy is my UV bug zappers that I that I have around the house. One of them just exploded the other night while we were doing dishes because it got water on it and it was like okay, so not near the sink anymore. But yeah, we have UV bug zappers around the house also, which is great
That's
when you
cool.
live in Georgia and it's summertime because
Yeah.
once the sun goes down, the zappers will go off with any
Yeah.
bugs that got in your house. But yeah, that is correct because it's below the spectrum of blue that activates that part of your brain that says, let's make cortisol.
That's a really great idea. Have you measured, like I have
The spectrometer.
yeah, the little,
Mm. Mm.
was it Hopo Color? Yeah, that's the brand.
I've got one on the way. My old spectrometer, I had a used one. I kicked the bucket. So I actually, as a Black Friday gift to myself, just ordered. It's not the one that starts with an
Hmm.
H. It's a
Yeah.
different one that starts with an S that someone else recommended to me. So that'll be here this week. So I'll be measuring my bug zappers to verify the truth of that. Be measuring everything now.
Yeah, back in the day when I was just getting into this, I mean, probably 2017-ish, I just bought a UV LED that I put above
Mhm.
my bed with one of those just metal
Like the
clamp
black light.
holders. Yeah,
Yeah.
and then I think I one day I put on my blue blockers. I'm like, wait, it's blocking a ton of blue in it. And so I was getting
You're
blasted
like,
with blue at
hmm.
like
Yeah.
10 p.m.
Yeah, I just keep those in the kitchen area and the main living area so we can, like I said, so we can see.
Your
Um,
husband doesn't yell at you.
right, exactly. So he's not like, dang it, I can't see anything. Yeah.
um, I want to ask you about your thoughts on grounding because this is a
Mm,
big topic. I think years ago I saw Clint Ober's documentary and I almost saw him speak live. I think he was the guy that really brought the grounding
hmm.
technology to the market of silver embedded, and then eventually I think carbon, conductive carbon stuff. And I did everything from like grounding at my computer, which I later heard was not a good idea because it's picking
Mm,
up all the electric
hmm.
fields
Yeah.
around. But sleeping rod to earth is something that I've been doing for the better part of, since 2010, since I learned about it. Um, Not to the wall, but right to the earth.
To the earth.
And
Yeah. Yeah.
I've noticed it definitely feels better doing it in the woods
I was
versus
going to
in a
say
urban
in the city.
environment. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm big on that because I get asked that question constantly. And my friend who I mentioned earlier, Dr. Sarah Pugh, she has lived with me pretty much for the last year on and off for months at a time. She's come to help me with my daughter because my daughter was having some health issues. And she stayed down here in my office, and there's a big window, goes right out to the yard. So she put grounding sheets and did the rod out into my yard and slept on the mattress. And she said, it was the worst sleep of her night. She felt terrible. She had horrible anxiety, even with the grounding rod. And I'm like, well, we're in the middle of the city of Atlanta. There's neighbors everywhere. There's, you know, God knows what running underground. So that's probably what happened. I've had a lot of clients have that same experience, but then I have the clients that live in the woods, like a rural environment on a farm, and they do the grounding rod sheets and they swear by it. They're like, this is amazing. I feel so good. It's such a health upgrade. And so I think, I really don't like anyone plugging into the AC current for a mat. I don't like that. I know Dr. Laura Conover, she's been on my show a couple of times. She sells a filter to convert it from AC to DC. So
Oh, cool.
yeah, if someone's sick, if they're bedbound, then that might be an option if they really just can't make it outside. But I, on the whole, I really don't like grounding products unless, again, you're doing a rod into the yard and you live in an area where there's not a ton of, you know, electricity, non-native EMF. I mean, there's tons of non-native EMF where I live. So, I mean, you got to be careful with them. And there's ways to ground indoors in the winter. Like my basement floor is grounded. I mean, I just take a conductivity meter and measure everything. My basement floor, excuse me, is grounded. Laying in the bathtub is grounded. So I'll take an Epsom salt magnesium bath. That's grounded. Washing my dishes, I'm grounded. Shower is grounded. So there's other ways besides just being outside barefoot.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd imagine if you see a lot of big trees, pine trees, and
Hmm.
you could that's probably a good sign that you could probably do rod to earth without an issue. I mean, I feel like trees just soak up
There's
EMFs
a
recently.
ton of trees back here. I think that's a saving grace. And that's what Dr.
Awesome.
Sarah put a tent in my backyard and slept back there. We have a bunch of pine trees, and she slept in the pine trees for like 3 nights after. My husband's like, your friends are crazy. Your friends are so weird. Like,
That's awesome.
yeah, my friends just sleeping in my backyard and the trees, pine trees. So, and then we found pine cones. Like, I keep finding more pine cones wrapped in copper around the house.
That's hilarious. The deeper you get in the health field, the weirder you get, I guess.
100%. 100%. Yep.
That's awesome. Yeah, I've heard that. Have you heard the theory that the magnetism of the Earth is stronger at night, and so
Hmm. Yeah, because
grounding at
there's the
night?
UV, it can interfere with that to some degree. And so when there's no UV available, then there's more of an availability, I guess, of charge. That's what I've
Hmm.
heard. Yeah.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, I can't wait to see sleeping underground in my bunker by
Oh,
next
yeah.
winter. What happens? I'm excited for that, and I'm working on the lighting too. I just had I think I said Matt Maruka on, and he was
Mhm.
telling me about just the level of lighting, like
On
having
the
it at
floor.
eye level or below.
Hmm. Yeah, that's what we do with the lights at night. I'll keep a panel on the floor on infrared only, or a lamp that's closer to eye level. But like I said, the big lights, we don't do the big lights. It's one way to make mom very upset. It's the big lights.
Yeah, I guess unless you have people over, right? Then it's
Yeah, we don't
yeah,
usually have people over though. My
yeah,
kids are too feral for
yeah.
visitors. But and here's the thing though, I think that people get into circadian life and the things that I teach, and they think they have to be perfect all the time. And especially this time around of the year of the holidays, you go to visit people. There's a certain amount of joy that and happiness that impact the mitochondria as well. And so if you're always scared and upset about, I can't go to this person's house because they use big lights, or, something like that, that can mess your mitochondria up as well. And so I had to stay the night with my uncle last month, and my son up in Charlotte. It's like 3.5 hours away. And they had the big lights on, they're in their 70s. I'm not going to just be like, hey, turn off your lights. I wasn't going to make it, they cooked dinner for us. And so, yeah, I just spent time with them, enjoyed being with my family. I didn't stress about them having their lights, tons of lights on 9 o'clock at night.
You should have gone off on like a 1 hour rant on quantum health. No.
How to alienate everyone in your life. I live by the motto of attraction, not promotion. So if somebody, I talk about all my stuff all the time on social media. So when I'm like offline, I don't want to talk about it unless somebody has a genuine interest. I mean, I kind of
Yeah.
like to stay incognito offline. I don't want my neighbors to know what I do. I don't want my, friends and family. I just don't talk about it because I'm like, I talk about it all day. And so if they want to know, I'll tell them, but I'm not going to go try to convert anybody and preach to anybody about how I live my life. I want them to say, hey, you're looking so much healthier than you did years ago. You seem so much happier. What's going on? Then I'll tell them what I do. But yeah, it's
Yeah.
taken a lot of years to get to that place.
Yeah, that's how I am too. I think it was a couple of years ago when I was really into the whole iron toxicity
Mm,
cult stuff. And one of the cashiers that I know up here, she was telling me that she was getting iron infusions and she hadn't gotten one in a
mm,
while and she didn't feel good. And then I was trying to talk her out of it and saying, don't do it. And then I realized that they can save lives. And then
yeah,
I go back to her and she'd gotten the iron fusion and she just more color in her face. She's
yeah.
energized. She's happier. I'm like, wow, obviously the iron infusion helped her. So I'm glad that I didn't try to talk her out of it.
Yeah, I've had to learn some things really the hard way being in the holistic health bubble.
Yeah, we can use the best of both worlds, right? Instead of
Yeah.
just one or the other.
Yeah, exactly.
Uh,
And sometimes, you might need something to save your life, but you're doing all of the basics. You're
mhm,
doing the right diet, the right light environment, and you're not abusing the
mhm,
system. I think the issue comes with a child that's being given, you know, formula with seed oils out of the womb, and then tons and tons of vaccines, and then, tons of uh, just all these insults that the little body just can't handle. And I think that's where we run into problems, not the not the mom who is breastfeeding exclusively and trying to do everything right, and stuff still happens. So,
yeah,
yeah,
yeah. Yeah, I grew up with eczema and I definitely noticed it
me too.
flare up flare up under stress. Even
Yes.
recently, I think like 5 years ago, extremely stressful time and it flared up. And um and my personal experience has been the basic stuff, the circadian health, the um animal products in general, because I was mostly vegan, vegetarian most of my life. But the fat soluble vitamins, if I had to pick
Mm-hmm.
one thing, like the A, the E, and the K specifically were huge for me. Just skin health in general, reducing acne as well as eczema. I think those are usually underrated. So, like, huge fan of cod liver oil, and I
Mm-hmm.
usually just swig straight from the bottle this time of year. And I notice it's like an antifreeze thing, and that's the PUFA thing's interesting because
Yeah.
we've seen this seed oil thing go way up. I think because of Saladino and big names talking about it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But there's a lot of nuance to it, and I also
Mm-hmm.
see like the Ray Peat perspective, and I
Yeah.
talk a lot about lipofuscin, and so there's a balance there,
Mm-hmm.
um, and I think it's the balance is in relation to vitamin E. So the more cod liver oil, the more vitamin E, to not a 1-to-1, but at least you should be taking E every day.
Mm-hmm.
But the fascinating thing to me is kind of the Viking connection and you know uh, ancient ancestral use of cod liver oil in extreme cold environments, and then looking
Mm-hmm.
into how ruminant animals. I mean, I see deer here, eating lichen and moss, and that's high PUFA, and so animals load up on it in the winter
Mm-hmm.
to resist the extreme cold that's coming because they know that's what it's helping with. So, um, yeah, I've noticed personally. I mean, with cold plunging, even I've loaded up on PUFAs, high PUFA foods in the past. Eat more fish, whatever it is. Doesn't have to
Mm-hmm.
be cod liver oil. And I definitely notice an increased resilience, versus
Oh yeah.
eating a ton of carbs and then going in the cold plunge. It's not the same
Mm-mm.
feeling.
Mm-mm. Yeah, I haven't gotten into the cod liver oil yet. I keep on meaning to get some. But we do the salmon roe.
Oh, cool.
I buy salmon roe, and my son loves it. He's been eating it since he was 6 months old. And we
Wow.
all do a spoonful of salmon roe every day. I get it from this place called Caviar Roos, which is it's a little pricey, but it's so good. I can't stand the taste of most salmon roes, but we all do the salmon roe once a day. So I'm a big believer in that. And yeah, there's like you said, there's nuance to the whole conversation. I think there's a balance of everything.
Yeah, I'll have to try it. I still haven't tried roe, so
We
I had
love it.
Seatopia on the show, and I think they sell some good stuff. So I'll see if I like
Ah.
theirs.
Yeah, we tend to do a good amount of like wild salmon, oysters. Like we try to keep our DHA up here. So yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I feel like it's safer to do as far as talking about creating age pigment and
Mhm.
lipofuscin. It's a lot safer for uh, Fitzpatrick, 1 or 2, or
Mhm.
European descent in colder climates to do
Mhm.
higher PUFA. And I just intuitively increase. I mean, I'm eating fish almost every day this time of year, and I feel great.
Yeah. Yeah, we eat a lot of it in the winter time, not as much in the summer, but yeah, I think it really does help to get through the cold months.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Um, so I want to talk about your app because I've been using, well, not consistently, but DMinder. I think I found, I don't know, 5, 6 years ago or something,
Hmm.
and you created one called MyCircadian that's really interesting. Definitely gives you a lot more info than the DMinder app. And I have it up here on my computer, and I'm seeing UV index 1, sunset at 354. And then what's cool is it has a little UVA bar,
Hmm.
and it shows I can get UVA until almost 2:30. Um, so yeah, what kind of prompted you to create this? Was it seeing these other apps and seeing what they were missing? And
Yeah, I was essentially having to refer people out to two apps to understand how to gauge their time in the sun and then when to know when sunrise, UVA, UVB, when those windows of time were available and then not available. And so, and then a lot of the ladies, I love them, but a lot of them were dealing with brain fog issues. And so they would get really confused by the two apps and then all the different other features that were in there. And so I wanted to create an app that was really simple, that was just all in one, where you could figure out, all right, this is the sunrise time. Then I need to go outside again at UVA. If there's UVB available, that's when you're going to make vitamin D. And here's sunset and nightfall. And then there's the lux meter, like I mentioned. So that can really help keep you honest in the winter when it's cloudy and kind of gross outside. I always have people measure their lux indoors and then go outdoors. And you still, on a cloudy, overcast day, can get like 10,000 lux when you're
wow.
outdoors. And so that meter keeps people motivated to go outside on those more cloudy days. In the summer, again, there's a vitamin D timer. So you put in your Fitzpatrick skin type, your body weight, your height, and it estimates off of those factors as well as the UV index what's a safe amount of time for you to stay out in the sun without the risk of overexposure. Obviously, don't use an app to override your intuition. If your body says, I need to come in sooner, then listen to that. But it's just a little gauge, kind of like DMinder, to say, all right, this is enough, or it's time to turn over. And then we've got a compass, because you ideally want to face east at sunrise. It's not a requirement, but a lot of people don't even know which direction east is. And so it's nice to have that feature, and then a moon tracker so you know what phase of the moon it is currently. So yeah, that's what's in there right now.
That's awesome. Is the moon tracker to do you believe in like what moon bathing? So I guess it would be cool.
I've never really gotten into moon bathing. I now I got to look into this. I more so use it for my perimenopausal and menopausal women who don't have a regular bleed, to kind of gauge, hey, this is your ovulation week timed up with new moon, or it's your bleed timed up with the full moon. Because I think the women still have an innate infradian rhythm that's still just ingrained in the body, and it does sync with the moon. And so I teach that in my community of how to sync up with moon and understand where you are and then plan around that. So if you want to do a little bit of fasting, which I recommend dinner skipping, I don't recommend breakfast skipping, but if you wanted to kind of pump the gas a little bit, then we would do it in your kind of built-in follicular cycle. Or if you don't bleed, then we use the moon to figure that out. And then if you wanted to have more of a rest period, I would say let's do that more in the luteal phase of your cycle. So that's why I have it in there, is to help people with that. But now I got to study moon bathing.
No, I'm not an expert. I just in the summer when it's nice out, one of my favorite things is hot tub, looking out at
Oh,
the moon. It's
oh
on a
yeah.
clear night. It's the best.
Oh yeah. That sounds really nice. Yeah.
Yeah, it's an awesome app. I'm definitely inspired now to use the Lux meter. I didn't even notice that on
Yeah.
there. That's super cool.
Yeah. And then there's, for people who are new to this information, if you get the app, there's a free version you can download. There's a little bar at the bottom that says free video guides. And if you press that one, I have a whole playlist of videos that talk about each little window of time, like daybreak, sunrise, UVA, UVB, and how long to stay out for those, what's ideal, what are the benefits specifically for mitochondria, metabolism, brain in each window of time. And then, of course, PubMed articles underneath each video to back up what I'm saying, because, people like that sort of thing. So that's all free with the free version of the app. So
That's
yeah.
cool. And it's been a while since I've used DMinder, but when you start a sun session, does it estimate, you said based on height and weight and all of that?
Mm-hmm.
And I guess you select if you're how much clothes you're wearing and it'll show
Mm-hmm.
your
How much
vitamin
clothes
D,
you're
IU.
wearing, cloud cover. Yeah. And
Okay.
we have a video just because, I mean, there's no app that can really tell you how much D that you've made. There's infections, genetic mutations, stress, all kinds of things that can impact how much D your body's making. And like you mentioned, it's stored in the tissues. So I mean, people will message me, this says I made this much IU. I'm like, it's the timer is there so that you don't risk overdoing it. It's
Yeah.
not so you can figure out how much vitamin D that your body is storing at a particular time because there's no app that can actually do that.
Hmm. I think
In
it's
my
cool
opinion.
too on the Fitzpatrick skin type. You at the bottom, it's helpful because you have the description of each one. So if you're a
Mm-hmm.
one, always burns, never tans. Two, burns easily, rarely tans. Then three, tans only after first burning. I'm somewhere in between two and three, I think. So
Yeah. Yeah. And mine, I get darker through the summer. So at the end of the summer, I'm like closer to a three. In the beginning, I'm more like a one. So, but when I cold plunge more in the winter, I do end up holding on to my tan a bit more, which is always interesting.
oh
Yeah.
yeah, and I was thinking the show I did with Chris, it was interesting how he talked about, is it something crazy like 60% of your red blood cells come to the skin, and
Mm-hmm.
that's what makes the red when
Mm-hmm.
you're getting sun exposure.
Mm-hmm.
And the goal is just to get that kind of pink,
The pinkening. Yeah.
yeah, and then stop there, right?
Yep.
So
Yeah. That's what I tell people. I'm like, the app can help you so that you don't overdo it because most people aren't even dialed into their body to feel like, oh, my skin's getting kind of warm and hot. But that's really the best time to go in when it's like, oh, that's it. I'm getting the pinkening effect or I'm feeling that like warmth, then it's time to go in or
that's
cover up.
awesome.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely feel when I get a really good in the summer, like sun exposure, I get tired earlier. Like it's
Mm-hmm.
every time. Like, and then I just knock out. Like it's way deeper sleep.
Well, you're making subcellular melatonin during the day also. So that's
Mm,
one thing people don't realize about sun exposure during the day when there's near infrared, which is all day long, that's you're making subcellular melatonin. So that actually can help with deeper sleep at night because then your pineal melatonin doesn't have to do so much work because a lot of the stuff's been cleaned up during the day.
that's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's so fascinating. I think for years I thought it was all made in the pineal gland. Then I looked into Russell Ryder's work. I
Mm-hmm.
interviewed him. I read his book, and he's worked with Doris Lowe quite a bit. And
Mm-hmm.
he says only 5% is made in the pineal and 95% is made in the mitochondria, which to me it was a huge light bulb moment. Like, wow,
Mm-hmm.
that's wild. So,
Yeah. And then he and Zimmerman did that study. I want to say it was in 2019 that said essentially you can get the benefits of near infrared when you're in the shade as long as the sunlight's reflecting off of the green plants, green trees, which is, yeah. So people think they have to be in the middle of the direct sunlight in order to get benefits. And you can get so many great benefits for your mitochondria, for healing, and then that circadian signaling just in the shade. You don't have to necessarily be in direct sunlight. And I don't think anyone really should. This whole idea of needing to spend 6, 10 hours outside, I mean, for most people, it's not really going to be practical in the first place. And then, secondly, I don't think it's needed.
yeah, I have a friend, Jordan, that lives in Miami, Florida, and he sends me beach pictures sometimes from his high rise, and there's
Mm.
just umbrellas
Yeah.
everywhere as far as you can see on the beach.
Yeah.
Everyone's covered. Yeah.
Yeah. If I was in Miami, I would be doing the same because my haplotype is not adapted to live in Miami for sure.
What do you think about answering some listener questions? Want to
Sure.
go through some of it?
Yeah.
Awesome. Um, Start with a basic one here. What does she eat for breakfast?
Hmm. I have a farmer that delivers to the house, and we get local breakfast sausage, and it's usually just a sausage they've made there at the farm. And so that's my winter breakfast. I don't really crave a lot of eggs in the winter. So usually just a big bowl of breakfast sausage outside, simple, plain and easy.
That's awesome. So are you fairly low carb in the winter?
I mean, it just depends. Like I said
Mhm.
earlier, I'm pretty lean right now, not super on purpose. Just it's just been a crazy year. Um, so I am eating during the daytime at lunch. Usually my breakfast is carnivore, low carb, and then I'll have maybe some potatoes at lunchtime after I've had protein. I do potatoes, sweet potatoes, baked apples. I'm not like what you would call high carb, but right now my body fat is a little bit on the lower side. And so I don't really push a lot of low carb keto. I'm more like cellar stable, root vegetables, that sort of produce in the wintertime.
Mm. Okay, awesome.
Yeah.
Um, let's see what else. Best practices or tips for menopausal women to balance hormones. You kind of talked about the moon tracker. That's one helpful thing, right?
Yeah. I think menopause is one of those times where you really do need to look at blood sugar levels, and leptin signals the glucose insulin axis. And so all the things I talk about with light are really, really crucial, especially light and dark cycles, blue blockers, and your evening, really getting your evening routine dialed in and your morning routine the best that you can and getting all that light exposure. Um, but also looking at nutrition to see how your body's responding to your food, because in menopause, typically, there is less blood sugar regulation due to hormonal fluctuations. And when you have blood sugar swings and spikes, you can be a lot more prone to hot flashes, and just a lot more of the more uncomfortable menopause symptoms. And so that's where, I'll get a little glucometer and just check at 20 minutes, check again at a couple hours, see how your body did in response to that particular meal. And you may have to troubleshoot around that. That's what I do with a lot of the ladies in my private community.
Yeah, when I played around with the continuous glucose monitor, I got a lot of flack coming from the repeat world because they say
Mm-hmm.
it's obsessive, and but it was a great learning experience. And I did the finger prick, so I would correlate the two and use different brands of finger prick glucose monitors. But I found the levels one was at least
Mm.
showing the trends that
Yeah.
and it was helpful, especially seeing like what supplements had an effect with meals and digestive enzymes or no digestive
Oh,
enzymes and
yes.
playing around with that.
Yeah. I love
So,
digestive enzymes, especially for my menopausal ladies, because
mhm.
as we get older, we have less digestive function. And if you're not breaking down and utilizing the nutrients from your food, your body can't do what it needs to do. And so I really don't love continuous glucose monitors as like this, you need to do this on day one. I'm like, no, let's optimize everything else. And then of 60 days from now, if you're still struggling with some of these symptoms, then I am going to say maybe we should swing for a CGM and let's just have a look. Let's see what's going on. Maybe there's something in your environment that's causing an issue. Maybe it's a particular food that is like a healthy food that shouldn't spike your blood sugar, but it is, because you're having a reaction to that particular food. So it's information, but that I do find that my menopausal ladies are a lot more sensitive in that area, and we do have to dial that in more.
Mhm. This is a good one. What are some tips on how to transition to working night shifts? That was
Mm,
actually my first job. It was like 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. It was horrible.
that is horrible. Ugh, yeah, night shift is so tough, but having a kid that was in the ICU last year and having to rely on hospital, and I really respect the people that do that want to help others. And so for that person, you're still going to want to keep, and this is what I have a doctor that was on my podcast. I think the episode will air mid-December. Dr. Schultz is his
Oh.
name. He runs MedCram on YouTube. And he said, and this is what I see as well, you have to keep your schedule consistent. So if you're working night shift 3 days a week, if you really want to optimize your body clock, you have to stay on your night shift schedule all the time, which is tough because you want to socialize and being around your family, but you got to keep your meal times, eat before the shift, eat after the shift, and keep your sleep time consistent. He said, when he has to do night shift, he'll bring a red light therapy panel into the office and do that on his breaks, do some red light therapy. I might even get something like a Krypton and do that, during my night shift to simulate outdoor. But that's a tough one. I might do a little bit more fasting. I might be really, really more conscientious about the water that I drink, especially. I would definitely be utilizing a good spring water with minerals, probably some hydrogen as well, because you're going to be more prone to dehydration due to the cortisol rhythms that you're dealing with and the environment. So, it's a hard job to do, but those are things I would do.
Yeah. Yeah. I've been following like the Tesla Optimus thing the last couple of years, and I don't know what I think about that. I think it's nefarious where it's heading, but I
Mhm.
think humanoid robots, maybe there'll be some competition. And I think humanoid robots for certain jobs like night
Mhm.
shift is the best place for them as long as they don't try to kill us all.
Right. I don't know about hospitals. Might not work. Or cops. Just
Yeah.
saying.
It was like a friendly C3PO, but who knows who's controlling these things. So, yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, kind of question off topic. I mean, I've been asking the last couple of guests their thoughts on just, it seems like there's something building that is really complex. Like you have the Starlink satellites, you
Mm.
have humanoid robots, driverless cars. And
Hmm.
I have a balanced perspective on all of it. I mean, I've looked at both sides and tried not just to demonize it out the gate, like saying, okay, what are good aspects that can come from this? But I don't know, it doesn't give me a good feeling seeing how integrated, and then the batteries and solar and
Mm-mm.
controlling people's, you know, being so intimately tied to the grid. And I know this because I've been off grid for 4 years, so I
Mhm.
know that world very well. But it seems like we're getting into a place where it could be a pretty locked down control system.
Mhm.
And I don't let it stress me out too much, but I like at least to try to, like, do you keep track of that stuff and kind of watch where things are heading? And
To an extent, because I don't want to slip into fear and getting into things I can't control. I am looking at some properties up in the mountains in North Georgia and really trying to figure out how to make that work for my family, some property, because I really don't love being in the city. I don't love having to rely on um, the system, quote unquote. I really don't. Just trying to wrap my head around how I make that work with my son, who I don't want him to be not have friends and be an outcast. And there's a lot at play. And with my daughter, we do need a lot of help with her. She has a lot of special needs. And so it's complicated. So there's a point where I'm paying attention, but then also a point where I have to remain sane and control the things that I can. So I do have a plan to get us, towards the mountains, out of city, and more self-sufficient as a end game, hopefully sooner than later. But yeah, um, I definitely don't think that everything Elon's doing is for good. I don't think the saviors have moved in like a lot of other people do. Um, yeah, if that's all.
yeah, yeah, I agree. Yeah,
Yeah.
I try to stay optimistic, but yeah, I
Me
don't.
too.
I think just growing your own food. I keep
Hmm.
telling people, getting solar panels, batteries. It's like that stuff you can really
Generators.
control, and
Yeah.
it's awesome. So,
Yeah.
um, yeah, scary thing with the Tesla system. I don't know, most people probably don't know this. If you get a Tesla energy system with solar, you can't charge their batteries with the generator. They don't allow it. You could do it and void the warranty, but they don't allow, which is super sketchy to me. I'm like, why
Mhm.
do they not allow you to charge your own batteries with propane or diesel generator? It's just, or gas. Super weird. Every system
Mhm.
I've looked at, you can charge your batteries with the generator. So you have even a, you have a backup. You're not
Mhm.
reliant on. It's interesting. Yeah, it's a whole world, but
Yeah.
I was just
I know. I
curious.
had this woman start following me the other day on Instagram because it'll tell you if somebody with a large account starts following you, and she has like 500,000 followers. I think she's some sort of a prepper. Like I was like, I can't follow you back. I'm sorry. I can't do this. My brain can't handle it. I appreciate what you're doing. I know it's helping some people, but I'm not ready for this.
Yeah. Um, Someone asked, what is some advice to reverse Hashimoto's, or how do you approach
Hmm.
Hashimoto's?
Yeah, I actually was diagnosed with Hashimoto's in my mid 30s, believe it or not.
Mhm.
I had antibodies, the whole nine. And at that time, and I was able to get my antibodies down to zero. All I did was get off the nuts, get off the dairy, get off the seeds, get off all the processed foods, stick to animal foods, whole single ingredient foods. And I really had to work on reducing my stress levels like tremendously. That worked for me. And I've had a lot of clients that come through my leptin program and they get their antibodies way down, some of them completely to zero. I had a woman recently that her antibodies were over 1,000. We got them down to, I believe, 150. And she's still coming down. And that's really through all the circadian rhythm stuff, but food as well. Certain foods, if you have Hashimoto's, I'm going to tell you to stay away from nuts, grains, and dairy, at least temporarily. And you may play around with adding those back. I can eat those now and they don't cause any issues for me, but I did stay away from them for a long time. So that's how I work with Hashimoto's. And I've had a lot of people be able to reverse it and don't
Do you
own the
think,
diagnosis also.
it's a good point. Yeah. Do you think when you're leptin resistant and that's down and you have a circadian mismatch going on and all that stuff, do you think the anti-nutrients that they talk about, lectins, phytates, oxalates, are more of an issue? Because I just look at that and I think it's overblown. Like a healthy
Mm-hmm.
human should be able to handle quote unquote plant toxins.
Yeah, I agree. I used to be in that camp of terrified of oxalates and anti-nutrients, and the human body is meant to be resilient. The problem is, I think everyone has a really big toxic load, really messed up body clock, so they're not detoxing properly. Like that's the biggest issue with your circadian rhythms being jacked up is that you're not able to detox. You're not making enough melatonin, which is a master antioxidant crucial for your body. You're not getting enough sunlight, so more. You're still not making enough melatonin, and so I think that instead of blaming all these foods, you need to look at your environment. You need to look at your stress levels. You need to look at your nervous system, uh, and understand that foods are meant to be eaten seasonally. You're not supposed to wake up every day and throw a pound of spinach into the blender and drink it. You're not supposed to eat almonds, nuts, and seeds all day long. They're to be eaten occasionally. If you look at how those are eaten seasonally, so I think people can handle these foods when they're eaten in ancestral seasonal amounts after they've dealt with kind of this big burden that they've put on themselves. So I don't like to look at anything as the boogeyman, honestly. I can't view health like that because it's just a very disempowering way to do so. I think we have to optimize making the body resilient. So that's my view.
I agree. Maybe last one here. What's your general advice for parents of toddlers?
Hmm. Get them involved with you. I mean, like I said, my son thinks wearing blue blockers is hilarious. He's like glasses, mommy's glasses. Like so, I just teach him everything I do. I bring him outside with me. I'm talking to him all the time and um, keeping the light, changing the lights in your home, not letting any screens be on after dark, feeding them really healthy, appropriate diets, I think is important. Because of my son's skin, I've had like, there's no room for error with him. And I think that's been really helpful also. He doesn't eat junk food. We never bought baby food. He just eats what we eat. Um, so yeah, just involve them in the process. And my son's really interested in it. He thinks it's fun. He
That's
likes my
awesome.
cold plunge too.
Does he go in it?
Yeah, yeah. Well, only when I clean it and the water's like 70 degrees. I don't let him go in there when it's 50, but I have a video of him. The last time I cleaned it, it was like 70 degrees and he was like in there singing and he wouldn't come out. I'm like, okay.
That's
So,
awesome. Yeah,
yeah.
I haven't done it in years. I mean, I did the old chest freezer thing, and I
Mhm.
obviously kept it unplugged, and I grounded it rod to earth. But I
Mm.
got one like the one you mentioned. It was a different brand that I'm going to get back into probably next year. And the filtration, I mean, they got so
Mhm.
sophisticated now where there's the
Yeah, mine has
filtration, right?
ozone, I think. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, you live somewhere in Idaho. I mean, and this is
It's cold.
my friend Carrie lives in Michigan, which is basically Canada.
Mhm.
She's like, I don't cold plunge in the winter. She's like,
Yeah.
I'll go out. She goes outside barefoot in the snow. She'll walk across the snow for periods of time to give herself a little CT. But she's like, you can pay me to cold plunge in the winter because she's been, it's cold enough outside. But in
Yeah.
Georgia, it's not as
Yeah.
bad.
I I built an awesome open basement where I'm moving hopefully this month or next month, and what I'm going to try is putting up without electrocuting myself like a heat lamp, maybe one or two or maybe even more, hitting me while I'm in the cold plunge because that made it a lot easier years ago when I did it. Just having the noonday sun with
Mm-hmm.
infrared hitting me. Something about the infrared while you're in the cold plunge, it
Oh
just
yeah,
makes it almost easy,
it
right?
does. Yeah, Chris gave me that, which that thing is insane. I'm like, the Firehawk. Have you seen that? It's
I haven't seen one in person, but yeah, I've seen the pictures.
yeah, I have the Firehawk right in front of my forge, so I'll turn that on, but it looks insane from the road because I have a little house that's kind of a replica of our big house and it's in the backyard. So people that drive by on the street, this whole house, the little tiny house is lit up
Like
completely
The Exorcist.
like
Yeah.
red. I mean, and it's really, really bright. Just, I don't know what they think of us, but
That's awesome. That's really
yeah,
cool.
yeah.
Well, Sarah, this was so much fun. It was great to finally connect and chat about all the fun stuff. And is it Sarah Kleiner Wellness? Is that the best
Hmm.
place.com
Yes,
people to find you?
yes,
Awesome. And the same
yeah.
on Instagram. Is that your
Hmm.
name on
Sarah
there as
Kleiner
well?
Wellness on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, website, all the things.
Cool. And you have courses people can check out on the site under store. And do you do
Yes.
consultations or is it like group
Right
settings?
now, I'm at capacity. So I'm just doing my community where I do Zoom meetings with them once a week and I have courses. And if someone wants one to ones, I have some really great practitioners I refer out to that are good friends of mine.
Cool. I'll definitely have to catch up on your podcast and listen to a bunch of your episodes. I think I've only listened to one or two, so
Oh,
I'll
cool.
definitely
Yeah.
check that out. So
Yeah. Yeah. I'll have to get you on my show when you have the time as well. I think it'd be a fun episode.
yeah, I'll have to restore my nervous system. I think we all got thrashed the last few years with everything going on
Big
in the world.
time. Big time. Yeah. I know. My upper back is telling me today that I need to get offline for a bit.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, yeah, thanks so much. And stick around as we close out the show. Thanks, Sarah.
Thank you.
Sarah's philosophy on health is really refreshing for me to hear because a lot of people in the space of circadian biology tend to get really extreme. I've seen that over the years where they just get very militant, very aggressive, and that's not a healthy way to live your life. And especially if you're sharing that to others as an optimal way of life, that's not ideal. We're human. We're not going to be perfect and optimal all the time. And if we try to be, usually that adds stress to our life. So I like that Sarah really integrates that into her messaging, that you don't need to try to dial everything in 100% of the time. If you want to check out her work, you can go to sarahkleinerwellness.com. Check out her courses, her podcast. She's sharing really great information. And I think no matter what health issue somebody is dealing with, utilizing her practical, easy to implement information is a great place to start with your health. My website is matt-blackburn.com. You can read about my CLF protocol and then see all of my recommended products that I'm constantly updating and adding and removing products. It's a great place to Christmas shop. I just realized today that it's less than 20 days until Christmas, which is just wild. This year really flew by for me. And I often refer to my own website to Christmas shop for family and friends and support their health, which is, I think, the best gift that you can give. This year has been especially stressful, and I'm sure a lot of other people can relate. Not only collectively, it's election year. We just got out of a long lockdown and masking situation, and you stack that with personal life stress, and it's just a lot. So what I've been using is the Apollo Neuro wrist device, which is a pretty affordable device for what it does. You hook it up to either your chest, your wrist, even your ankle when you're sleeping. And through an app, you can select which vibrations to input to the body that affect heart rate variability and parasympathetic tone and all sorts of stuff that relaxes the nervous system. And I've been combining that also with the Neurophone, which is about double the price. The one that I have on my website, if you go to other websites, it's $200 more usually. That's the Neurophone NF3. And combining that with the Apollo Neuro device, which I usually use on my wrist, is incredible, especially if you drive for long periods of time. I just got off the phone with my mover this morning, and he often drives cross country, and he uses nutrient IVs to recharge when he gets home. But I think tools like this are really underrated. Yes, you might look goofy having something strapped to your head and something on your wrist, but it's worth it to feel better. And long drives really tire the body. They're really harsh on our physiology. So using ultrasound to the brain and calming vibrations on the wrist, if you're going to drive 8-10 hours in a day, just really a game changer. And then you start to stack that with my Mitolife supplements that you can find at mitolife.co, especially the ones like vitamin C, vitamin E, shilajit, magnesium, zinc, taking melatonin when you go to bed, which is much more than a sleep aid. That's for your mitochondrial function. You just start to stack these things, the right supplements and the right devices, and a long journey or an intense situation in your life really doesn't have to do a number on your body. You can actually feel balanced if you're implementing the right things. So all of the Mitolife products that I've curated are really a culmination of the last 14 years of research and personal experimentation, spending hours in health food stores, talking to people that take supplements, and just figuring out what really works. So for me, getting a proper drinking water filter is really the place to start. So that's why I came out with the 7-stage water solution unit that I custom built from scratch with my friend Austin over at Flow Motion. And that provides truly clean water. And it's not RO, it's not distilled, it's beyond both of those because it uses dual deionization, with remineralization, not just using calcium, but actually magnesium. So it's a whole process where the steps are in a certain order and it produces water that's not aggressive, that doesn't leach minerals from your body, like a lot of people say about filtered water. And that's the base for your cooking. If you do magnesium foot baths, which I did for years, you can finally get clean water for soaking in magnesium chloride or magnesium sulfate through your feet while you're sitting and watching TV or working at the computer or whatever. I also sell grounding sheets, which I recommend doing rod to earth and experimenting with that. And as we talked about in this show with Sarah, it's definitely something that you have to be careful with and play around with. Generally, if you live in the woods around a lot of big trees, I would personally feel safe grounding, especially rod to earth. We also have really clean shampoo and conditioner without any synthetic ingredients. And then under the wellness tab, a lot of really clean supplement options. We don't use magnesium stearate. We use bamboo extract as the only excipient, which is a great source of naturally occurring silica, which helps to counter the excess aluminum that nearly everybody has stored in their body. And a lot of the bottles, I'd say at least half of the line now, are made from something called bio bottle. So it cost me extra, and I don't mark up the products because of this, but the bottle will actually break down in a landfill in a decade or two versus hundreds of years, like nearly every other supplement company out there. And that includes the lid. So when it's exposed to bacteria and UV light, like in a landfill, it will actually start to degrade much quicker, like orders of magnitude quicker, actually, than almost every other big supplement company out there. And I'm really proud about that. I was the first, as far as I know, to pioneer that and introduce that into the supplement world. And I really hope that sets a new standard, because microplastics really do a number on the human body. And I want to do my part with Mitolife by not contributing. It's impossible to be perfect and not contribute any plastic to the world. But as a supplement owner, shipping out thousands of bottles every month, I definitely want to make sure that I'm not adding a huge burden to the endocrine disrupting, plastic garbage patches that are present on the earth right now. So that is all for today. I might do one or two more shows before the holiday. I think everybody's already in vacation mode from what I can tell. This time of year, things really slow down. So I'll probably take a break. I'm excited. I'm finally moving. I found out just a couple days ago, same area, but I'm moving to more acreage. So if you've been out of the loop, a lot of people haven't seen my stuff because I've been extremely censored. I get messages daily on this. You can go back and listen to my podcast that I did. It's a solo show, Why I'm Building an Underground Bunker. And I just had to let go of the second concrete worker. So I'm moving on to the third. So hopefully I find a good concrete crew. It's really just blown my mind as a business owner, seeing other business owners and how they operate, building out my acreage, just not doing it right, cutting corners, doing shady stuff. I've been a lot less harsh on myself observing other people this year. I think I'm doing pretty okay compared to most that are providing horrible customer service and just not doing the job correctly. So check me out on Instagram. I do lives there usually once a week or every other week. I'll probably continue doing those once I take a break from the podcast for the Christmas season. So you can find that at Instagram, Matt Blackburn, and then Mitolife is on Instagram as well. And that's a great place to stay abreast of new information that we share. There's a lot of great posts on there. One just went live on vitamin E and how it's much more than a simple antioxidant, having effects on hormones and skin and so many other things. So check that out, and I will see you guys next Friday. Stay supercharged.